Alright, so once again, like before, you need to make sure that you do have your API and API secrets from the Binance client. Once again, if you're not sure how to set this up, you can check out the video right here where I explain all the tutorials on how you can do this. Now, after you have all this set up, the first thing that we should do is understand what sort of parameters or information that we need to give this bot for it to be able to trade. So once again, we can create a dictionary with this information, and inside of it, we first need to give it like a key. So for example, we can just call this DCA Bot 1. And to that, we also need to give it the variables that we're going to be needed to trade with. So we can give it a list, and the first thing that we always need to give is what pair you're going to be trading with. For instance, if you want a dollar cost averaging buy Bitcoin with USDT, then you would say BTC USDT pair. So that would be your symbol. And then next is how much money you're going to be putting into this strategy overall. So for this example, we could just say $1,000 in total. Then after that, you also need to tell it how many times that you want it to buy. So for this example, we can just say buy for now, just so I can show you how this code works. But you can change it obviously to whatever value you want to. And finally, the last parameter that you have to give it is what is the time interval that you're going to be investing in. So once again, just because this is an example, I'm just going to choose a very short time frame. So I'm just going to say something like 5 seconds. So now that we understand what type of parameters that we have to give our bot, then we can actually move on to the coding part. So first things first, we need to create a price updater class. Now I've done this in the past videos already, so I'm not going to go over exactly how you can code it, but I will just copy and paste it here and explain a little bit about how this code works. First, we have the init function, so what we're going to be giving to this code. And then we have the start and stop function, just to start and stop it obviously. And then our get current prices function allows us to connect to the Binance exchange and actually get all the tickers. And then we can filter them out later to determine which pairs we actually want to trade. And finally, we have our update prices. And what this will do is connect all of the Binance prices from the exchange to the actual trading bot that we're going to be using. So you can see right here that we do need a CryptoBots dictionary, which I can create right now. And what this will do is just store all of our bots information and how we can actually access the different bots. But once again, I'll explain all that later. So after we have this price updated class, then we can actually go ahead and code out our dollar cost averaging strategy. So if you're not too familiar with how coding works, don't worry, you can just follow along and I'll try to explain how everything works. So we then need to create another class, and we can just call this the DCA Bot. And let's just put some spacing here. So then once again, the first thing that we need to create is an init function. And what this does is just tell us what is going to be inside the bot and what variables is the bot going to use. So we'll have a key and variables. So the first thing that we can do is just write self.key equals key, and what this is just basically the name of the bot. Then secondly, this variables function right here is going to be this list up here that we're going to be giving the bot. So the first variable that we're going to be giving the bot is a symbol that is going to be trading. So we can simply just call this self.symbol is equal to the first variable in the list of variables, which is at index 0, because that's just how coding works. And the second variable is going to be the amount that we're going to put into the bot, so we can just call it self.amount. And then make sure you change it into a floating number, so it's not just taken in as a string. We can call this variables index 1. And then after that, you can see up here we have the buys and the time that we need. So we can simply say that self.buys is equal to, once again, the floating number of variables index 2. And then it gets a little bit complicated here just because we have like seconds, or you can also change this to minutes, days, weeks, whatever you want. So we're gonna have to implement all of that functionality here. So what we can first do is just split this up. So variables at the third index, and then we can do dot split. And what this will do, it will just separate the number and the unit of time that we have. And then once again, we need to make sure that A is a floating number, like that. And then after this, we need to determine which units of time we're actually going to be using. So then we can say if B is equal to seconds, then we can say that the self.interval will just be equivalent to whatever the number of A is, because all this code will be, because when you enter a number in, it will always take it as seconds by default. And then we can also say else if B is equal to minutes, then we can say self.interval is equal to A times 60, which will give you every minute. And then we can also do the same thing for hours, like this, which would also be self.interval, say A times 60 times 60, and you get the point. You can basically keep this going until you reach all the time units that you want to be able to invest at. Now, I'm not going to cover all of them, obviously, but just know that if you want to add one, you can just add it like this, and then just multiply by whatever value that you need to get your time interval. Now, finally, after all of that, then we can just have an else statement, which just in case that we misinput something, then we can just say that it's an invalid time period, and then we can just exit the program, just in case. And finally, what we need to do is self.original interval is equal to self.interval. And don't worry if you're confused by this line right now. I'll go over why we actually need this piece of code later on. But basically, that is going to be all the variables that we're actually going to be needing in this code. Now, the next thing that we need to code out is how we can actually get the current price from the Binance exchange. Now, although this isn't very important, we do need the current price so that we can calculate how much we actually need to buy. So once again, we can just call this price check. So new price. And so this price check function right here is going to be the same function that is going to be called up here from our price updated class. So just make sure you have this in your code. And then because we're actually getting all the different tickers for the different pairs from the Binance exchange, we now need to filter out which tickers that we actually want to trade with. So we can say for ticker in tickers, and then we can just check which symbol it is by simply writing symbol check is equal to ticker symbols. Actually, we need to give it the different tickers, not the new price. So then after this, then we can go through each of the different tickers and find the value that is related to the symbol variable. And then we can simply say if the symbol check is equal to our self symbol, then we can say that the new price is equal to float of ticker price. So what this does is actually get the different prices from the Binance exchange and then finds the variable related to the price that's related to the exact symbol that we want to trade. So then after we have this, then we are pretty much good to go. We can add a final check in here just in case you misinputted the actual name of the asset. So we can just say if new price equals none, which means we didn't find any symbol that is related to the symbol that you inputted. Then we can just simply print this symbol wasn't found. We can just say was not found. And then once again, we can just exit the program. And finally now, then we can actually call on our main function with the new price. So now we have all that coded out, then we can actually move on to the main function, or how this strategy is actually going to be implemented into our bot. So once again, we can create a function called main, and it'll take in the parameters self and new price. So this function will be actually fairly easy to create because the dollar cost averaging strategy is a very straightforward strategy. So after we have all that implemented, we can just simply say if self.interval is less than or equal to 0, that means the interval for the time has run out. Then we can simply write self.buy order, which we'll actually create later, new price. So what this does is that if the time has run out, which means the time interval has been reached, then we can simply just place a buy order for a specific amount. And then what we also need to do is after we buy, then we need to reset the interval time to the original time, which is why we needed the self.original interval in the first place. Like that. And finally, after this, then we need to determine that if the self.interval hasn't been reached, then we need to subtract time from the self.interval until it will be reached. So we can say minus however much time that we have. So in this example, this time.sleep here determines how often you're going to be checking the price from the Binance exchange, which will also determine how often you're going to be calling this class right here. So if your time.sleep is 5, then you do have to subtract 5 seconds because that's how much time is in between every function call. But for this example, we can just say 1 for now, just so we can see how it works. And after that, that is going to be the entirety of your main function. And finally, we need to create a few more functions. So the first thing is we need to create a buy order function. So once again, it will take in parameters of self and price. So then if our interval has been reached, then we need to buy a certain amount of the asset that you want. So then we first need to calculate how much we're actually going to be buying, which will be self.amount divided by how many buys we're going to be placing, so self.buys. And then we finally need to convert this into how much of the asset we're going to be buying. So for instance, this right here will determine how much money in USDT that you're going to be needing to buy Bitcoin. However, we need to convert this to the price of how much Bitcoin we will actually be buying. So then we need to divide this by the price. Then after that, we can create the actual buy order that will call our client, and which will basically connect us to the Binance exchange. And then we can just simply make a market buy order. And once again, if you're not sure how this works, you can check out the tutorial video in the description below, which will explain all of this. But basically, all you need to know is that you just need this piece of code to say that it's a market buy order, and then you need to give it the symbol that you're going to be buying. So for us, it will just be the self.symbol, and then you also need the quantity, which can get a little bit confusing. So then the quantity that we'll need to buy, once again, will be a floating point number, and then we need to use the decimal library. to convert and round the buy amount. So once again, the buy amount will be from this number right here. And then after this, we need to quantize this so that the decimal value will be rounded to a certain number. So this will be 0.0001, which is the smallest increment that Binance will actually use. And then finally, we have to round the number. We need to make this so that it rounds down, just in case that you don't have enough for your final buy. So you can simply do this like that. And that will be your buy order. Now finally, after this, you do have to update some variables in your class. So first thing we need to update is the amount left. So we need to subtract the amount that we just bought, which would be self.amount divided by self.buys. And then after that, we also need to subtract 1 from the self.buys. And finally, we need to check if self.amount is less than or equal to 0 or self.buys is less than or equal to 0. Then we need to be able to stop the bot. So then we can create another function to stop the bot. And after we create this function, this will be the final function of this entire class. So we'll be done after this. So definition stop bot. Again, you need the self parameter. And then to simply stop the bot, you can either use the exit or you can just use raise exception. Or if you want to get really fancy, you can also create a different function that will take out the bot from this bot's dictionary up here so that you'll actually be able to have the rest of the code running. For instance, this is super helpful if you want to modularize all your different trading bots and have multiple running on the same script. However, that is a bit complicated, so I won't dive into that into this video. But if you're curious about that in the future, make sure you subscribe to my main channel, which I'll probably touch on it later in the future. But for this example, we can just say raise exception. And our exception will just be bot. And then we can use the self.key so that we know which one actually stopped. So this is once again very helpful if you have multiple different bots running at the same time. So you can say bot self.key stopped, just so you know which one stopped and which one's not. Now, after we have all of this done, this is going to be pretty much our entire code. Another thing that also is very helpful is if you just add in a print statement right here, which will just basically update you on which bot has bought what amount and how much is left. So once again, we can just say self.key, just bot, and then we can say the buy amount. So this could be in Bitcoin or Ethereum or whichever asset that you choose to trade with. And then just put a period here, and then we can say self amount left. So then this will tell you how much money is left for the bot to buy. So then there you have it. This is pretty much the entirety of the DCA bot. So very quickly, I'll just go over a little bit of how this bot works overall one more time, just so you understand. So first, we give it the key and the variables. The key will be the name of the bot, and the variables will be separated into the symbol, the amount, and the different buys, and the buy interval that it will buy at. And then this price check function here will be able to get the new price from the Binance exchange, or rather it will be called by the price updater class, which will return all of the symbols from the Binance client and the Binance exchange and give you all the symbols so that you can choose which assets you actually want to trade from the Binance exchange. So that's what this class here does. It basically filters out all the different tickers and then finds which asset and the price related to that asset and uses that for the bot. And finally, our main function here will just determine that if the self.interval has run out or that the time is reached, then it will create a buy order to the Binance exchange, and it will also reset the interval. Otherwise, it will just subtract 1 second from the time, or if this time.sleep here is different, then it could also be subtracting, let's say, 5 seconds or 10 seconds, depending on how often you want to check the exchange. But for this example, we'll just use 1 second, just so I can show you. And finally, this buy order here will connect to the Binance exchange and also determine how much money you'll be buying every single time, and it will place a market buy order to the Binance exchange here. And then after that, we just update our different variables inside the class. And finally, if the self.amount or the self.buys reaches 0, then we can simply stop the bot, which is right here. And after all that, it will just print out which bot actually bought how much money and how much money is left. So to simply check this code, once again, we need to make sure we have our crypto bots dictionary down here. And then you do need to add a little bit more code just so you can actually run this code. Because right now you have all the different classes set up. All you have to do is just create a way to give them the information and to call the different ones. So we can just say for key in bots dict dot keys, then we can first just print out what the key is. So this dictionary, bots dictionary right here, is related to this dictionary up here, which has all of our different variables for our bot. We can print it just to make sure it's right, and then we can actually filter out the different types of bots. So once again, this is very helpful if you have multiple different bots running at the same time. So we can say if DCA is in the bot key, then we can know that it is obviously a dollar cost averaging bot. So we can just create a simple instance of it. We can just say DCA bot class, and then we can give it the key, which is the name of the bot, and then the variables that are actually related to that key, like this. And after that, all we need to do is just save that instance somewhere. So this is why we have our crypto bots dictionary. So then we can just say that the name of the bot is once again related to that instance. And now finally, then we need to call our price updater class. Updater is equal to price updater. And then we need to give it the crypto bots dictionary. So we can just call it like this, crypto bots. And now finally, we can just print start, just so that we know it's actually starting. And now we can just say price updater dot update prices, like this. And now everything works properly. Then what we should see is that all these variables are going to be given to the bots, and let's just shorten this to, let's just say 2 buys for now. So it will buy twice with 5 seconds in between each buy. And each buy should be $5,000 because we're splitting this up into 2 separate groups. So we can just make this a little bit faster so that we don't have to wait as long. Let's just say 2 seconds. And one more thing, this is just very helpful when you're testing your different trading strategies, is just that to comment this out so that you're not actually placing the buy order in Binance, rather just running the code to make sure that everything works properly the way you want it to. So just make sure you have that commented out. And now if we try running this, then we should see that, yep, we have the name of the bots and the starting, and it's bought this much in Bitcoin. Oops. And then it's bought this much in Bitcoin, and it says that there's $500 left, which is exactly what we want to see. And then this exception right here basically says that after the second buy, it has stopped. So this is a bit confusing, so let me just bump up this buys a little bit more just so we can see it better, and we can just change this interval to even small. So this means that it will buy 10 times with 1 second in between. So let's try this one more time. If we run it, we should see, yep, the name of the bot and that it started, and then it's bought this much every single time. And you can see that there are slight changes to the price because obviously it's not going to be the same every time. However, it is going to be buying $100 every single time. So you can see that it is dropping by $100. And after this statement right here, then the bot should stop, which it did. So this is just a very easy example of how you can use coding and the Python and Binance API library to be able to implement your own different trading strategies into your portfolio. So once again, you can change this to whatever parameters you would like, and also you can trade different assets obviously, but this is just used as an example. And once again, the dollar cost averaging strategy is very easy to implement just because it is so simple. But in the future, I'll get on to more complicated trading bots, such as algorithmic trading bots or degree trading bots. So if you're interested in those as well, make sure you hit that subscribe button to this channel and to my main channel, which I'll go more in depth and explain how the strategy actually works. But for now, thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you all next time. Happy trading.